Want to welcome you guys back to another episode of Pistons Talk Podcast presented by FanDuel. I'm joined by a very special guest, Zariq, who is a credential media member, photographer, does cover the Detroit Pistons at Real Bully Ball. Zariq, welcome back to the show, man.
Appreciate you having me on. It's been a little bit more than a monthly check-in, but I'm excited to be on the pod and talk some Pistons basketball, especially now that the season's over. I'm definitely missing that part of my daily routine, so it's always like so fun to talk Pistons.
Same here, but I don't miss staying up till 4 a.m.
That's completely fair. Yeah. Yeah, same.
Okay, so I wanted to just get straight into the season. I just wanted to know like your overall thoughts on this season. It's kind of having like a 35,000 foot view of from preseason to the playoffs.
I think this was a really successful season. When you look at it from start to finish, there were not many people, even in this community, that saw the Pistons objectively being a 60-win team. Not even the most optimistic Pistons fan really saw them being the first seed pretty much from November to April. And I think that in of itself is a huge win, especially considering the holes they had on the offensive end when it comes to shooting and just overall scoring as well. I think developmentally, it's also a huge win. You look at stories like Danis Jenkins this season, who was converted from a two-way contract and into a 2-year deal where he's starting playoff games for you, like really important games, and um, was able to be a really important piece of this team. And it wasn't just because somebody got injured, even though obviously Jaden Ivey and Marcus Sasser at the beginning of the season were injured. Um, he was able to maintain that position throughout the year, and I think that's a huge win for the Pistons. Like having him, and then also Tolu Smith get converted from a two-way to a standard deal. I think that's the first time, maybe outside of that losing streak season, I lost track of what happened there. Um, that they had such success converting contracts with two ways to full standard deals, and I think that's like something that can't get overlooked. Just looking at like the G League and ultimately winning on the margins, and that's how you sustain, your window of being a contender is by continuing to win on the margins. And I think those were two great moves for the Pistons, is just sticking with Tolu, sticking with Danis, and really seeing through on their development. I think that was huge. And then just looking also throughout the roster, I think Cade had a great season, and it feels weird to say because like obviously he's going to make first team all NBA. That's pretty much a lock. He finished top 5 in MVP. But I still felt like this was a season where I walked away looking at Cade, and I'm like, man, he could have a much better season next year, right? Like I thought his points per game kind of dipped throughout that like February to April range. Obviously there was the collapse lung towards the end of the season, but even before then, his points per game dipped a little bit, and he got a little more passive. I think if you see a Cade next season, I think I'm expecting a lot better of a season. But even then, you had a great season from him, and also a lot of defensive development. Speaking of which, Asar Thompson, who solidified himself as, in my opinion, the best perimeter defender in the NBA. I think that's pretty much widely renowned at this point with the playoffs he had. I thought he was incredible. I think also just looking at Asar, it's also a huge win to have him pretty much healthy throughout the entire season. I think, there was little bumps and bruises throughout, but he was fairly healthy throughout the season. And after fighting through that blood clot a couple of years ago, it's a big win. And to see him really like, I would say at times being like the second most important player on this team. I think that's a huge win for the Pistons, and looking at like the future of this team and the core of this team. I think Asar becoming kind of a defensive engine was such a win as well. And then obviously Jaylen Duren. Obviously people are going to look at the postseason and how that was a roller coaster for Jaylen Duren, but if you look at the regular season, I mean, this is someone who finished top 3 in most improved, made his first All-Star team. He did get a Defensive Player of the Year vote. That counts for something. But he just overall had such a great season, and I thought a lot of it, which is ironic because it was something that didn't carry over for most of the playoffs, was you know not just being a play finisher. People would say Duren is just a play finisher. He's a guy who just catches the lobs from Cade, and he reaps the benefits of Cade. But you look at what he was able to do this season, and in terms of just putting the ball on the floor, getting to the rim, and then also creating for others, I thought he had a great season. And I think that's also a huge developmental win. So it was just a lot of wins with development that also led to wins in the win-loss column. And I think we get overexcited sometimes talking about this team when we see the wins that they have, and you look at like the trade deadline, right? Not saying I fully agree with how it was approached, but you look at the trade deadline and you see that this is a team that the front office clearly wasn't planning on being this good. Ultimately, just going into the deadline, getting a on the margins kind of deal when a lot of people wanted them to get a star. It tells you that they didn't think that they were there, and even though they thought they weren't there, they still finished this well. So I think overall, it's a huge win of the season.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, the line was like 44.5.
Yeah,
And they a lot because a lot of people had like Orlando, New York, Cleveland as like the top teams. Even like I remember seeing like preseason ranks of like Atlanta being above us. But like overall, I was honestly like really impressed with just like the progression of them being able to hold that number one seed for as long as they did.
yeah, I think that was a huge part of it. And I remember when they did capture that one seed. Um, Thinking like, wow, this is a great moment, right? But even I, at that point, didn't know if it was gonna, stay the case all the way up until the end of the season. There were points in the season where I was like, okay, maybe they'll finish round 2 or 3 in the East, which is still a huge win. But being able to maintain being the best team in the Eastern Conference from like Thanksgiving to end of season is crazy, and I think that's like a huge win for JB, who also got his contract extended this season as well. So yeah, I think that win loss column being what it was a huge win. I saw, I don't remember who it was. I believe someone on 97.1 at the end of season presser kind of said that you won around 70% of your regular season games, but you only won around 50% of your postseason games. And I think next season will be the step towards kind of maintaining that level of consistency throughout. Where you're obviously winning the regular season, but then also you're able to carry that over into the postseason where you're not, putting yourself in a position where you need to fight back in each playoff series that you're in, because obviously that's not sustainable. And we saw the end result of that.
Yeah, I remember my expectations last year. It was like win a playoff series. As soon as we won a playoff series, like I was good with it. I was just like, you won a playoff series, we're good. Like you took Cleveland to 7 games and you had a chance to actually make it to the Eastern Conference Finals if you didn't choke a 9-point lead. And you know, you could have beat Cleveland at home, but like overall, like I thought the playoffs were really good.
Yeah, I definitely think this team could and honestly should have made it to the Eastern Conference Finals. Just looking at how each series played out, and honestly how I viewed this team compared to the rest of the Eastern Conference, I do believe this team is better than what the Cavs were this season. And obviously the Cavs won, and that's ultimately all that matters at the end of the day. But I do believe the Pistons should have won that series, and ultimately it's their mistakes that cost them the series, and it's the reason they're not still playing basketball right now. That being said, they're still a young team, and they're still figuring out a lot of things. I mean, literally 2 years ago today, we were talking about who the Pistons would be drafting at 5. So it's still quite the win.
The fact that I haven't been on Tankathon in the last 2 years has actually been kind of refreshing.
Yeah.
Just spun Tankathon maybe 2 weeks ago, just to see, and I was like, how does Washington get 8? I don't I don't know, man. That's wild to me.
Yeah, man. I did a Tankathon spin right before the lottery this year just for like the hell of it. And it was such a fun experience getting to watch the lottery this year and just like not have any care about, who lands where and just watching for entertainment purposes. Even obviously last year was that as well, but you're still kind of like, I almost didn't want to watch the lottery because there's still that PTSD from all the years of watching the Pistons at 7 or at 5 or whatever. Like they only got the one pick the one time, but I digress. That was yeah.
I I don't want to lie. I laughed when Utah went to 5 last year.
Honestly, I knew that they were gonna make out with at least a decent prospect, regardless, and they won this year, man. Like
Yeah.
they got Ace Bailey last year, um, and now you get to add potentially Darren Peterson. You get to potentially add Cameron Boozer. I mean, we'll get into the draft later, but um, man, it's it's so interesting because for all the people that claim the draft lottery is rigged, I mean myself included last year, I was like maybe this is rigged, right? Like how did the Mavericks lose Luca and gain Cooper Flag in the same season? Um, but when you look at this year, man, like they punished the Wizards, they punished the Jazz. Those were the two teams that they really went after in terms of tanking. And for both of those teams to get the top two picks in the draft, and the Grizzlies as well getting the third pick, I think that's just so funny. And that's I mean, like that's proof that this lottery was not in fact rigged. Because if it was, those teams would have like fallen to like 5, 6, and 7.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty wild though. We will get into the draft a little bit later, but I'm just kind of mind blown that back-to-back years, the team that has traded for Anthony Davis has won the lottery. So, I mean,
Yeah,
if you're listening, Utah, you want the number one pick, this trade for AD.
he's the new Jahlil Okafor.
I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Shout out, shout out, Ja. I mean, if you've been a Piston fan during the rebuild, you remember us getting excited about Jahlil Okafor and Josh Jackson. Shout out.
I mean, to be honest, you were excited for Jahlil Okafor, maybe not for the right reasons, but you were excited for him just because ultimately he got you the number one overall pick. He brought the vibes and good aura that he brought to New Orleans. And then what was the year before that? Minnesota?
I don't even remember. I'd have to go on his basketball reference page. I feel like
Yeah.
he's played for a lot of teams.
They kept getting the number one overall pick wherever he went. So shout out to him. Bun and Cardigan legend as well.
Oh man, that's a
Yeah,
OG.
throwback. Yeah.
Shout out to James who's covering the Eastern Conference Finals, and I think Nick is still doing his podcast. I think it's called the Coping Hours on YouTube. I've definitely gone down the rabbit hole and watched just Nick because I just miss his rants. Because it's just I wish he was still on Twitter because I feel like
Same, man.
during this season, I know the reaction videos would have been insane.
Yeah, his Twitter presence is definitely missed. Honestly, ever since he was off the app, I was like, man, you can immediately feel the difference. But yeah, I hope Nick's doing well. I know I think he took a break from doing coping hours, so I don't even know what his thoughts were. I could have texted him, but I don't know what his thoughts are on the whole postseason series and everything like that. But yeah, man, I all that to say, whoever wants the number one overall pick next year, I think you should definitely consider giving Anthony Davis a go here.
Yeah, for sure. Uh, I know a lot of Pistons fans are probably clicking on this video because they said, what do the Pistons need to do this offseason? So, after watching the playoffs, what do you think the biggest need is for this team right now?
So I'm gonna do a kind of a bit of cheating, and I can't narrow it down to one. So I'm gonna do
Mhm.
two.
Okay.
Um, but I'm gonna list them in terms of priority, and I think this might surprise some people. Um, the number one most important thing for the Detroit Pistons to do this offseason is to get this draft right. I can't emphasize how important it is to have a pick that's as good as it is. Not saying that obviously they're picking in the lottery or anything like that, but to have the 21st overall pick, which is honestly like a very trade upable kind of pick, where if there's someone you want kind of in that mid first round, like around like that 15 to 19 range, let's say, you definitely have a pick that's able to kind of make that happen a lot more easier. And then also just for the fact that this is probably the highest the Pistons are going to pick in the upcoming years, barring any like substantial season where shit just goes left, right? Like I think this is a team that's probably going to end up being around the 28, 29, 30 for the next few years. I mean, their pick this year would have been 28 had they not done the pick swap with Minnesota. So I think getting this pick right is really important. And I think it's especially important because this is such a good draft. We'll get into who specifically the Pistons could look at in a little bit, but I think there is some really high level talent throughout this draft that's available. And the most important thing, like I said earlier, is that if you're a contender, you have to continue to win on the margins. Your roster is going to get more expensive this summer alone, whether that be just extensions, whether that be extensions, and then also bringing in a bigger salary guy via trade, whatever that may be. Your your roster is going to reach that first apron, possibly knocking on the door of the second apron pretty soon here. And getting draft picks right is going to be really important because those are players that could be pretty high quality on a very relatively affordable contract. And to get someone who you can add to the core of this team potentially, I think is also really important as well. You look at I said this, I think, to Ku the other day. The Philadelphia 76ers were kind of in a similar position. I believe Joel Embiid was in year, I want to say like six. I believe year six. Um, and they had just concluded the bubble season. And obviously, you don't want to end up where Philadelphia currently is, right?
Yeah.
Especially with their franchise star. But just kind of comparing, and again, this isn't a one for one thing, but just looking at where they were, they didn't have a Tyrese Maxey at the time, right? And then they go into that draft with the 21st overall pick. And it kind of what I view as a similar draft class. And they were able to land a Tyrese Maxey, whom changed honestly so much for Philadelphia that now their window isn't solely dependent on Joel Embiid, right? Like, not saying you're going to have that level of success, right? That's such a rare case, but it is important to like find someone who can actually contribute for years to come, late in the draft as a contender, because you never know where it can go. You never know like how things may go injury wise or whatever it may be. To add someone that's young, that has potential on this team and fills holes on your team as well, I think is such a win, and it's such a better pick than what you would have is essentially like almost a second round pick at the end of the first round. Um, I think that's a huge part. And then secondly, I think the most important thing the Pistons need to do this offseason is, I guess the only way to put it is commit to being a contender, right? They didn't do that this season. The season kind of walked the lines of development, like a trying to develop guys and then also trying to win. And at the same time, they didn't really pick a side, and they kind of stayed here,
Hmm.
and they could have gone here at the trade deadline. Not saying they needed to, and obviously, like they almost made it to the Eastern Conference Finals. Could have maybe potentially given the Knicks a run for their money. I think they were a great matchup for the Knicks. That's neither here nor there. But next year, the Eastern Conference is going to be a lot better. Like there's just no way around that. And then I also think now, if you're committing to look at yourself as a contender, you also have to look at the Western Conference is looking like. And with a 7'4", 7'5" alien, you really need to arm yourself with the most weapons possible that make you feel like you have a chance at ultimately like taking down this proverbial giant in San Antonio or OKC for that matter. Because those are two teams that are going to be juggernauts running through the West. And if you make it through the Eastern Conference gauntlet, that's the team you're going to want to meet at the end of it. So I think this offseason they have to understand that they are walking into next season as a contender. They are no longer the hunted, they are the hunter. And as such, they have to approach this offseason with some level of aggression.
I love the Philly comparison. I really do. I'll give you another team they don't want to end up like. You don't want to end up like Atlanta from a few years ago, where you make it to the Eastern Conference Finals and you give everyone extensions, and then you just take such a step back in the standings where you kind of have to look yourself in the mirror and decide whether or not are we going to trade these people? Are we going to get rid of these people because they're not really fitting within our timeline? But I agree with you. You do have to get the draft right because, like, we'll talk about some prospects that I have outlined. I honestly think there's a some good players out there that you could actually pair next to Cade in the backcourt or get bigger in the front court as well. But to me, I think it's shooting. I think you need more shooting around Cade Cunningham. I mean, you see the record with the Pistons when they make over like what 12 plus threes. They were almost like an 80% win percentage this season. But I mean, you just look at the box scores and the 3-point shooting. It was so bad this season.
Yeah, it was rough. And part of that was also just like you had one shooter ultimately
Mhm.
throughout the entire season, and that's a lot of weight on Duncan Robinson, whom this is just a complete aside, but every time every time I shot a playoff game, there was a guy who I believe it was like his season tickets. He would sit because I'm right where the away tunnel is. There's like a separate staircase. If you've been to the Little Caesars Arena, maybe you've seen it. It's where like the media sits. It's like a separate little area, and it connects to the floor basically. Where I am on this staircase, there's a guy who goes at Duncan Robinson every single game without fail, because he doesn't play enough defense. And when he's not making shots, he's killing Duncan. And I've seen a lot of fans in the arena online kind of have a similar sentiment about Duncan. But I feel like this is a good opportunity to kind of show why Duncan was so important this season. He was single-handedly carrying the spacing on this team. Cade's three-point like jump didn't really happen until like the end of the season. I look at that Toronto game towards the end of the season, actually, like right after Duren and Stewart's suspension, where I was like, okay, his three point shot all of a sudden is looking a lot better. I don't know what changed, what happened, but his 3-point jump happened where he was able to put up more volume and hit at a more efficient rate. That being said, not having a Tim Hardaway Jr. to Duncan Robinson's like quote unquote Malik Beasley killed the Pistons this year. Because this is a 60-win team that even if they didn't go out and acquire some all-star level guy, if they just, I mean, and obviously Kevin Huerter wasn't healthy for the playoffs, and that was unfortunate. I thought he had some good minutes in the regular season, but even then, his 3-point shot wasn't where it used to be. I thought he was able to do a lot of great things, not including the 3-point shot, but he was able to do a lot of great things on the basketball court. But ultimately, the Pistons needed shooting, and it not having a second shooter to take some pressure off of Duncan, to take some pressure off of Cade, lost them playoff games. And I think that's definitely something that has to get addressed this offseason. Obviously, we'll get into the ball handling aspect of things as well. But yeah, I think Duncan was a huge success this season. Also, I like he could have came out and been Joe Harris, right? From a few years ago.
Oh my
If you know,
god.
you know, right? Like, but he came out and he played some really incredible basketball, in my opinion. He made some really great plays, not just shooting the basketball, but moving off ball, kind of directing guys. If you look at the one play where I believe he had Duren slip, and I think it was like game 6 where he was gonna set a flare screen, and then he like shows like he's gonna stay there, and he rolls quickly, and Duncan's able to get him for a easy dunk. It's just like stuff like that. I thought he was huge. He made a bunch of effort plays, and I thought even though he's not a skilled defender, I really thought Duncan Robinson, nobody outside of like Ausar Thompson or Isaiah Stewart tried as hard on defense. Not saying he was able to get a lot of stops, but that man tried his ass off on defense this season. And I have to give him props for that.
Yeah, I mean, he hacked like a mofo, but I mean, he was out there trying.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I love what you said about him having just like being the only scoring threat out there. And like Cade's 3-point shot was like this, like all season. Like he'd have months where he was shooting like maybe sub 30s, 35%. Playoffs was insane, especially with the Trajan side. He had like a broken rib and then coming back from the collapsed lung, which it's a good sign that his 3-point shot is, getting better. But I mean, you kind of touched on the Trajan stuff as well. Like he said, we need more perimeter shooting and then more ball handlers. I know some people have kind of speculated like what that could be. Do you think he was talking about a specific player, or was he talking about maybe getting guys that are just a 3-point specialist and can handle the ball?
Well, to answer the second part of that question, there's only like a couple of those guys in the league.
Yeah.
So I can't imagine he expects one guy to do all of it. That being said, there are some guys that are going to be available this summer, whether that be trade or free agency, that definitely do kind of address that in some shape or form. There are obviously shooters that are going to be available this offseason in the free agency, but there's also like there's the elephant in the room of going after like a bigger name guy, however you may do that, right? And I think that's kind of regardless of what you and I talk about here today, I feel like that's kind of an inevitability where they'll approach this offseason kind of looking for that big fish.
Mhm.
Um, who that may be, I don't know. I mean, obviously, you look at guys like Trey Murphy, who played spot point guard minutes. Obviously, not this season as much. Who I still think is a great fit on this team. You look at Trey Murphy, you look at Kyrie Irving. Those are two guys that immediately come to mind. There's Tyler Hero, who I know is divided amongst this fan base in terms of want him or not. But he does address both of those things as well. Obviously, not a great defender, but you'll take what you can get, especially considering he would probably be like the cheapest of all three. It's just going to be an interesting offseason in terms of seeing what Trajan meant by that. I think ultimately that does get addressed by a big fish rather than some small marginal moves because you already
Mhm.
have Danis Jenkins, you have Marcus Sasser, you still technically have Karis LeVert. These are all like guys who can handle the rock on some level or form, and I mean Danis didn't shoot as well from three in the postseason, but he showed the ability to hit threes, especially throughout the season in the regular season, and then even if you followed him in the G League, that was something he really developed. And then obviously Marcus Sasser is a sniper, and was able to handle the rock as well. So I doubt you're going to go for depth guys that can handle the rock and are taking away that ball handling responsibility from Cade. But we'll see.
Yeah, I thought of another player. I thought of Zach Levine because like the way he worded it said it could get expensive. It was like it only gets expensive if you are like looking at like the premier players that can shoot threes and handle the basketball. You mentioned Tyler Hero, who's a little bit expensive. I don't really know if there's interest there or not. A Kyrie Irving, which a lot of people have kind of just been whispering, and then the whisperings kind of getting a little bit louder. Some people have mentioned like CJ McCollum, Jamal Murray, which I doubt Denver lets Jamal Murray go. I just don't see that happening. But I mean, there's a lot of players out there that kind of fit that bill to what he was talking about.
Yeah, there is, and I think honestly, I think Jamal Murray might not be a bad shout. Um, how they go about doing any of this is still kind of like up in the air because there's still a lot that's undecided in terms of extensions, in terms of just like who they see as their core. Obviously, I think it's pretty unanimous that Cade and Ausar are part of that core. I
Mhm.
personally see Isaiah Stewart as part of that core. But it's going to be interesting to see how they go about going. And of course Jaylen Duren as well. Before I
Yeah.
forget, yeah, he. But the question mark around him is the extension this summer, where currently he's walking into the summer as a restricted free agent, right? Where he's not officially on the roster until they tender that offer. So that's going to be an interesting situation to watch. Obviously, I doubt he goes anywhere, but it's the NBA and you never know. um Crazier things have happened, like Luka Doncic got traded in the middle of the night on a night before the like weeks before the trade deadline. So that was it's just it's a weird league, right? Like shit happens. So Jalen Duren is part of that core. How they add to that core in the draft, how they add to that core via trade, I don't know. But the guys I definitely look at, I look at Tyler Hero. I look at Trey Murphy. I know Shams mentioned Laurie Markkinen, and maybe that could be a possibility. Only I only really see it as a possibility if Utah's really considering selecting Cameron Boozer at number two, which I have heard like around the league is a possibility. And if you think about it as well, Carlos Boozer is in the Utah front office as well. So it's definitely a possibility. I still think Darren Peterson goes number two, but we'll see. And then also you look at like uh Trey Murphy, Tyler Hero, Laurie Markkinen. I don't know if I can see the Zach Levine fit at this point. Um, I didn't think he had a great season in Sacramento. Obviously, there was a lot around that. They had a horrible season just in general. But I feel like if the Zach LaVine thing was going to happen, it would have happened by now, right? Like we've been talking
Yeah,
about Zach LaVine to the Pistons since Troy Weaver was the GM of this team.
yeah,
So if he goes out and trades for Zach LaVine this summer, I would be shocked. But it just someone that kind of fits that archetype of being able to score high volume and also take off ball handling pressure, because I think that was also and I talked about this with Ku, that was a big win for the Pistons in the playoffs, was figuring out in game 6 and 7 that starting Danis Jenkins, who is a ball handler next to Cade Cunningham, took away a lot of pressure from Cade. Obviously, he wasn't healthy and he didn't honestly have the best game 7 or 6 for that matter. He had like kind of quieter games, but so much pressure was taken off of him, and I thought the Pistons played a lot better with a second ball handler on the court, because they went away from Ausar Thompson as a ball handler. So I look at guys around that elk, and then obviously there's the elephant in the room again of Kawhi Leonard. Is he going to be available this offseason? Would he be interested in coming to Detroit? Who knows? But yeah, there's a lot of big fish that potentially could be available this offseason for the Pistons. And ultimately, I think any of those guys, depending on what you give up, do elevate the ceiling of this team, right? Like there's just no way around it. Like you look at, even like I'll go with Trey Murphy, right? Like that's my personal favorite. Um, I think he adds so much to this team, and I think he still has the potential to be an all-star. He was the same draft as Cade. He averaged around 22 points per game last season. I thought he had a great season. I think he's someone who's just kind of waiting to be in a winning situation,
yeah.
and people will really see his value when he is.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people, they just see like what he could go for, and I think they're just so hand shy with it. But I mean, just the way Trajan worded it, he was just like, those players are expensive, and sometimes teams don't want to trade those players away. Made me think, I was like, okay, big fish is maybe on the horizon this offseason.
Yeah, I feel like it's less of an if and more of a when.
Yeah, it's not if Trey Murphy gets traded to the Pistons, it's when he gets traded to the Pistons. That's how I kind of feel about it.
Yeah, if I were to say three guys, I think I would keep my eye on the most. It would be him. It would be Tyler Hero, and then I think it would be Kyrie Irving as well.
Yeah, I'm with you. I know you kind of touched on this player a little bit about him being like part of the core, and there's been a lot of reports about Jaylen Duren and his next payday. I think Omari had reported that his camp is looking for $40 million annually. I mean, when you kind of look at Jaylen Duren's regular season and how he's developed as more of a secondary option with the Pistons, do you think $40 million is an overpay? Do you think it's just right, or where would you feel comfortable with paying him?
So it's interesting because like prior to the postseason, I think you and I both would have agreed, like pretty much set the number at Jaylen Duren's agents. You know, like whichever number his agent says is the number you kind of agree to, right?
Yeah,
But now you come into this postseason, and that being the roller coaster it is. Um, I'm gonna take my number from Chris Mannix from Peacock and NBC, who is an NBA insider, very respected guy around the league. He says the number for Jaylen Duren is around 25 to $30 million now. Executives see it like that throughout the league, and I feel like that's probably fair. And I feel like if you look at this postseason as an outlier for JD, getting him around that number, let's say like $27 million roughly. Um, Jaylen Duren replicates the season he had and is able to carry that into the postseason next year. You're looking at this contract like the biggest robbery of all time. Like you just made away like with a crime. I think he's capable of being a max level guy. I think the postseason, for whatever reason, just didn't go his way, and that's ultimately going to affect negotiations. I think the only way things kind of creep up into that $40 million range is if they let him test restricted free agency, and there's teams like Chicago or LA or whomever that contact him and try to give him the max. Then you're in those conversations. But if JD and the Pistons are willing to come to a deal before restricted free agency opens, I think Mannix's report probably would be accurate, and I think most Pistons fans would be pretty happy with that.
yeah. I mean, 40's a lot. I know there were reports before the playoffs like max, and I was like, I don't know if you can really build a team with two guys that are on like rookie scale maxes of like Cade and Duren. So I know some people are like me, where they're more visual learners. So I made a graphic to kind of outline the players next year at the center position of what they make. So we'll just use the 40 million report for context. So that would put him as the seventh highest paid center next season. And you look at some of the guys on this list. I mean, would you say Jaylen Duren is better than Bam right now?
Well, that's kind of hard to say considering this is a season where Bam Adebayo dropped 83 points. Uh, so I feel like I still might go Bam. But ironically, Jalen and Bam have kind of been compared to
Yeah.
each other throughout Duran's career, and I think that's someone you can inevitably see him kind of reaching. And I think Duran can definitely be around the Bam tier for sure.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned like 25 to 30 with the Manic stuff. I mean, like that kind of puts him like around like Isaiah Hartenstein, Jared Allen, Miles Turner, Nick Claxton, which I think he's better than Nick Claxton. I think he had an incredible game against Nick Claxton. I love Miles Turner, but looks like he's pretty looks like there's not a lot of light at the end of the tunnel with him. He seems pretty, I don't want to say he's washed, but he's getting older for sure.
Yeah, it's weird because he's like, is he's got to be like 30 at the oldest, right? Like
Yeah.
29, 30. But he did have a weird season. I think Miles Turner in the right situation because I do not see him almost under any circumstances entering next season as a Milwaukee Buck. I think in the right situation he'll be okay, and I think he'll look more like the Miles Turner we saw in Indiana. But yeah, I'm with you. I definitely feel like if you're looking at this kind of salary breakdown, you see Jakob Poeltl, who which is funny because like Jakob only at 19.5 million, but kind of being an unmovable contract for Toronto's kind of hilarious. Because that's really not that much money in today's NBA. But Zubac being at 20 million, Nas Reed 23, Claxton 23, Turner 26, Jared Allen 28, Hartenstein 28. I think these are all guys that you want Duran to play similar to in a postseason environment. I think you could say that Duran comfortably was better than any of these guys in the regular season. But the postseason does unfortunately matter when it comes to negotiations, and it's the most recent thing that you've done, right? Like it's unfortunate. It's like that "What have you done for me lately" kind of thing, but it's how the business side of it works. Being 22 plays to his favor. But yeah, I'd say talent wise, he's around the top five of this easily.
Yeah.
But pay structure wise, I could see him around that like set. I'd go 8 to 10 range probably.
Yeah, my only fear is if you do pay him, like let's say you give him like the Alperen Sengun money, like 35 to close to 40 a year, you have to get everything else right. Like you can't have any more misses, you can't have any more free agency like whiffs. I think you have to get everything correctly right because like if he's your second best player, your second option, and he's 35, 40 million, and you're not getting that production that you want in the playoffs, and you might have to retool in a couple of years.
For sure. I just it's hard. I have a hard time envisioning that he actually does get that 35 to 40 million this summer just because of how things went. Um I think having him in between that like Miles Turner to Isaiah Hartenstein kind of range, I think you're pretty comfortable with that. And I feel like that's pretty realistic. I feel like you get him in that range. You still have Trajan Langdon's favorite term, which is optionality. You still have optionality. You still have some room to maneuver this offseason, in terms of looking at guys to bring in and trade or free agency. You still have the ability to do things like that. Obviously, the Tobias Harris contract situation opens up around like $25 million in cap space. So, um, obviously the Pistons are going to try and bring Tobias back, but just he'll most likely be on a cheaper deal as well. So you have room to move if he's between that 26 to $28 million range.
Yeah, hopefully, it's just hardball. Like you're going in with the max, and maybe you can kind of meet in the middle. I
Yeah,
would
for
be happy
sure.
with, but I mean, like you mentioned, like if LeBron leaves, the Lakers might just throw him a restricted free agency offer. I mean, I'm sure Luka would love throwing lobs at Duren.
He would. But if you're Trajan Langdon, honestly, and I think if you're Jaylen Duren as well, um, and you do see a future here, which it's hard not to, right? Like him and Cade play so well together. He's established himself as a member of the core of this team. Um, I feel like you look at JD and you look at the Pistons. I have a hard time seeing him actually reaching that level of restricted free agency because I believe there's that period from I don't know when it begins officially. I mean, obviously, guys are already negotiating. If we're going to be so honest,
Yeah.
but there's that period where teams officially can negotiate with their own free agents, and I believe their restricted free agents is part of that before any restricted or unrestricted free agency opens. And I totally expect them to get a deal done during that time.
Yeah, I think a lot of the reporting is just like initially like what these agents want, not so much what the players want. Like the agent's job is to try to get their players the most money as possible.
For
So,
sure.
I mean, they're like their representation's probably saying, yeah, we want a max. Like, and if they meet them in the middle, they're probably happy.
Yeah, totally.
Another player that is extension eligible, which I think some people are very high on, is Ausar Thompson. So, do you think they should try to get an extension done this summer or wait until next offseason? You think?
I totally get it done this summer. You wait any longer, and Ausar Thompson will be even more expensive than he already is. He came away. I think if the Pistons had one guy that you can say came away from the playoffs as a like win, it's Ausar Thompson. Because obviously, Kate Cunningham, you know what he is. He's the franchise guy. He is the All-Star, LNBA, potential MVP guy in the future. Ausar Thompson coming away from the playoffs, having the respect that he has league wide now, where we in the Pistons community, whether it be media, whether it be fans, have all seen Ausar Thompson. Well, mostly all have seen Ausar Thompson as this like highlight of the Pistons team, right? Like seeing Ausar as like an alien ultimately, right? Like you see
Yeah.
the things he does on a basketball court, and these are not things that like you go play pickup. These are not things like you'll ever see happen, right? In an actual gym. None of the plays he makes defensively make any sense. His feel for the game is insane, and he's a complete game changer on the defensive end. Obviously, the offensive end of things is why he's not going to be like a 40-50 million dollar per year kind of guy right now. And if you're the Pistons front office, you're going to kind of like think you're lucky stars that he hasn't reached that level of development yet, because that gives you some more room to negotiate. That being said, I do think Ausar Thompson will get extended this summer as soon as it's possible. I think he deserves an extension. I think he is critical to the Pistons being a contender for the next however many years. And in my opinion, you can't have what this team is without Ausar Thompson. And I think he'll have a lot of motivation to grow offensively. I've personally like been, I don't know, like 1 to 2 feet away from Ausar when he's warming up pregame. Like the hours before the fans are allowed in the arena, I'm there when he's shooting with Fred Vinson. I'm there seeing like his shots, and they go in a lot. I think a lot of it's like a mental aspect of the game, and I think a lot of it is reps and getting more comfortable. And I think with the healthy offseason, because that's also a big part of it. This is his second healthy offseason of his NBA career. Uh, it's going to be huge for Ausar. I think like having that level of confidence that it seems like he acquired through this playoff run has kind of given him a chip on his shoulder that, everybody knows Ausar. Like, even if you don't know him personally or haven't interacted with him personally, you can guess that Asar is the nicest guy. And I can confirm to you that he is genuinely such a really nice, like even keeled kind of guy. Obviously, Amen has more of the notoriety for being the Huey to his Riley, or I'm sorry, the Riley to his Huey. That's a Boondocks reference if anybody out there gets that. But it's it's kind of starting to see the level of regression with the SAR pickup, whether that be, I mean, obviously you don't want to see him get kicked out of games and stuff like that, but seeing him get texts here or there, talking a little more shit, you can see he's kind of developed an edge to him. He's developed a level of motivation to him. He said at the end of the season, I don't remember who got the quote, so I apologize. I think it was Jacob Richmond with M Live, where they asked about the motivation and looking at this postseason and this specific series with Cleveland, like what they would take away from it. And he says, like, yeah, I'm going to let this sting. I'm going to let this hurt for a while, because it felt personal. The series felt personal to me. And obviously you lost the series. Nothing really makes you feel great. But if you're a fan and you hear your, key player say that this series felt personal and you know that they're on the verge of really making a leap, that's exactly what you want to hear. You want to hear a player really have an edge and a chip to them. I mean, you see, obviously Victor's his own guy, but seeing the chip that Victor Wembanyama constantly carries with him, and what that brings out of players, I think having a chip on your shoulder is huge. And I think Ausar Thompson has a chip on his shoulder, and he will have a lot more decimals in his bank account this offseason.
I remember having this conversation with Koo, and I told him, like, I thought Ausar could get like Jalen Johnson money. And like a lot of people like, no, like, dude, that's an overpay. And I was like, I don't think you understand what type of the defender he is.
Yeah.
Even though like before the playoffs, like we all knew he was a good defender, but when a coach actually game plans to be on the opposite side of the court of you because you're just so locked down and you're actually just causing havoc, that's an ultimate sign of respect. I mean, unless you're Sam Merrill, you probably don't want to see Ausar Thompson. But I mean,
Yeah.
that's a whole other thing, man. Which I'm sure you saw like I was like, what's going on with Ausar? Why doesn't he like Sam Merrill? It's just like, bro, it's like those were just like accidents.
Yeah.
The second charge, I couldn't do anything for you though. I was just like, bro, like what's going on?
I don't think he had anything against Sam. I think it was literally just the fact that Sam happened to be an unlucky guy at an unlucky time. Both instances. But yeah, man, like it's just like you look at someone like Dyson Daniels, and I think his contract's around like $22 million per year now. And he, in my opinion, is a worse. Not saying Dyson Daniels is a bad defender, right? Like, he's widely known as one of the best perimeter defenders in the league. But I think Ausar Thompson is league's better defensively. I think Ausar Thompson. It's Victor Wembanyama and it's Ausar Thompson. They are in their own conversation defensively in the NBA right now, just because they can affect the game in so many different ways, whether it be on the perimeter, whether it be as a shot blocker, because Ausar Thompson has the most insane standing vertical I think I've maybe ever seen, where he just all of a sudden appears. Like he was standing like 0.001 seconds ago, and all of a sudden he's meeting a 6'11" center at the rim. It's insane. So I think you'll look at Ausar Thompson's contract, and it will probably be similar to if JD ends in that $25 to $30 million range. It's probably going to be around there as well.
Yeah, I mean, he floats, man. Like that volleyball spike
nuts.
he had during the playoffs
was
insane, man. Like just some of the blocks and just the way he elevates. It's like I honestly wish he uses athleticism a little bit more offensively. Like if you know you're gonna miss it, just go up and just like dunk on someone's head. Like
totally.
Like
I think the finishing around the rim is like a huge development point for Ausar. And I think like if he can use his athleticism that way as well, watch out, man.
Yeah, I know the offseason is going to be a really big one for him. And not even Trajan said he didn't even get to have a healthy offseason last summer, which I wasn't aware of. But I see him being in the gym with Fred Vincent, maybe a lethal shooter. I don't know, but
yeah, potentially.
Yeah,
hopefully.
We'll see. I saw the funniest meme. They're like, "Sorry, I understand it now, Thompson." Which, if you guys follow Lethal Shooter, you probably got that really bad.
Yeah, you got Ausar Thompson shooting from like what was the one he shot it from like a helicopter or something like that, or he shot it like in the air. I don't know. He's done everything. I saw one where he was shooting a ball that was on fire.
Yeah. I mean, some of the creativity he does with shooting is insane. I was like, bro, like, how do you even think of this at night? Like what do we do? What are we doing? I mean, shout out to Lethal Shooter, but we'll see, man. I hope they do extend him because I think it'll be cheaper versus like if he has another like all defensive season, you're just like, ah shit. Like I'm gonna have to pay him like maybe 40 million just to keep him on the team.
Yeah, I think extending Asar now is like a must if you're Trajan Langdon, and the rest of the front office. I think you definitely want to get that deal done sooner than later.
Yeah, I mean, he even said both of them would be expensive to kind of like keep around long term. So, well, we'll see, man. We'll see. So, one of the next topics I wanted to get into was, the big name targets. I know we talked about it a little bit, like here and there, but there was a little mention from Amari that Pistons could be looking at like a Lauri Markkanen, who we've talked about ad nauseum, and Kawhi Leonard. I know he's a player that you talked about this season on this podcast. So, I mean, when you look at those two names, I mean, like, do you think that's kind of like the archetype they're looking for?
So it's interesting because obviously they're both front court players. Kawhi Leonard, who has played smaller power forward throughout his entire career, and then Lauri Markkanen, who's pretty much just a power forward. He might have to play some small forward minutes if he stays in Utah with Jaren Jackson and Walker Kessler, but that's another conversation. I think archetype is interesting. I think they fit a certain mold of player where Kawhi, you look at him, and obviously, like it goes without saying, that is a two-way player, right? Like that's a guy who
Mm,
can make things happen on both ends of the floor. He dropped what was it, like 55 against you in
mm,
Intuit Dome this year. He had, I think, probably his best regular season of his career this year, where he played a lot of games for the Clippers. He um, shot really efficiently. He scored a lot. It was a year where Paul George wasn't there. It was a year where even James Harden wasn't there by the halfway point. Zubac wasn't there, and they still made the play in and almost the playoffs as well. So Kawhi, the kicker with Kawhi is obviously that he's 35 years old. Um, he's dealt with injury issues throughout his entire career. That being said, you get a healthy Kawhi even for one season because I believe his contract would be coming up as well, pretty soon here. I think it's in a year or 2 years. Regardless, I think if you can get Kawhi for the right price, you would happily take Kawhi Leonard. The other part of Kawhi Leonard is, will Kawhi Leonard want to play in Detroit? Right? Obviously, he didn't want to play in Toronto, and they won the championship, and whatever. That's cool. But being on the older side of things, you don't really know how that is going to end up. If there's a Kawhi Leonard who walks into Detroit like, I don't really want to be here, I don't really have any interest in doing this, and then there's obviously the um, whole scandal with him that still technically hasn't reached a conclusion yet. There's a lot of factors around Kawhi Leonard that might scare someone away. But if we're looking just from a basketball standpoint, it makes complete sense, right? Like you would have a starting lineup with Ausar Thompson and Kawhi Leonard. Good luck, right? Good luck NBA. Good luck Eastern Conference. That's a team you expect to play significant minutes in June, if that were to happen, and if Kawhi and Asar and Cade and everybody were to remain healthy. That's a huge one. That's obviously like, talk about big fish. Like that might be potentially the biggest fish that the Pistons could land this summer. And if he's available, because that's also part of it. We still don't know what the Clippers' direction really is. Obviously, they have a top 5 pick in this year's draft, but they still don't really have control over their future. There's a lot of uncertainty around the direction of this team, and then obviously Steve Ballmer's not someone who's really eager to kick the can and be like, okay, it's time to rebuild, retool, whatever that may be, and let's get rid of the guy that is currently putting butts in seats in our brand new arena, which I was able to be in this year, which I had mixed opinions about, but it is very technologically impressive, and the whole atmosphere outside of the arena I thought was the best part of it. Neither here nor there, but that's someone who's a big name, right? And that's really important for the Clippers franchise. So we'll see if they actually do look to move him. But if they do, I do fully expect the Pistons to at least make a phone call. Same for Lauri Markkanen. We've pretty much said all we could say about Lauri Markkanen at this point. Can score the ball really well. He's played under JB Bickerstaff already. I don't think his current level of defense would probably be able to be accepted by JB. Knowing how JB really emphasizes the defensive end of the game, and then also the fact that um, he can't really sustain not being at least an average defender in the postseason, because it's an easy way to get attacked and it's an easy way to give up points. And this is a team that really makes its money on the defensive end of the game. So I think Lauri Markkanen, his flaws in this community have really been pointed out a lot. But what doesn't get enough credit and doesn't get enough attention is the fact that he is an extremely talented offensive player. He is a winner, even though he hasn't made the playoffs. In a few years, it's ultimately not his role. He's not ever going to be your 1A on a championship team. That's what you have Kate Cunningham for. But can he be a second option? I think he can. And I think if you get him in that type of environment, and I think you get him in Detroit and you put him next to Cade and you put him next to Ausar and Duren, I think he opens up a lot for Duren as well. I think that's a really good move for the Pistons. It depends, obviously, how much that's going to cost, because Lord knows what Danny Ainge is going to try to pull in a Lauri Markkanen trade, especially at like kind of the height of his value. But that's someone who I definitely think could be a difference maker for the Pistons. I don't know if I see him getting traded. The only way I really can see that happening is if the Jazz end up picking Cameron Boozer.
Yeah, it like both players are unique in like talking about them and like the pathway of possibly getting them. Like Kawhi, like you mentioned, one more year at 50 million, and does he want to leave California? I'm not sure. What happens with the Clippers? You lost James Harden because you didn't want to re-sign him. What kind of happens just with their trajectory of how they want to compete in the Western Conference? It's really strong. And the aspiration stuff as well. It's just like you don't really know what's gonna hang over there, but it'll be interesting. Lori, to me, I know Danny wants a SAR, but that's not gonna happen. Like
No,
we
no
already
shot.
we
Yeah.
already know that's not gonna happen. But I mean, I think you can get to a pathway with Lori. And I think some Pistons fans, we talk about all these big names, like you have to add valuable players in these trades. And there may be some fan favorites that might be in these trade packages like all offseason long that you're probably rolling your eyes at, you're probably getting annoyed at. But like to get good players, you have to give up good players and draft capital. So, I mean, I think both players make a whole lot of sense. I would love the pick and pops between Laurie and Kate. I'm not even gonna lie to you. I think it would be
Yeah.
excellent.
Yeah, I think that would be an incredible fit. I think he's such a seamless fit on this team. The questions around him ultimately aren't outside of the defensive end of the game. Like they're like, oh, his contract expensive, this, that, the other. I think Lauri Markkanen's such a dream fit for the Pistons. He's someone who I still think his best basketball is ahead of him. I know like people will be like, oh, he's 27, he's 28, or I think he's 28. Um, that's in the prime of your career, man. Like especially in today's NBA. Like I look at Laurie as someone who really could stick around and fit the timeline of the Detroit Pistons, which still matters, right? Like, this is still a young team, and you want to ultimately go out and get someone who's going to fit that timeline, which is also part of why I think Kawhi maybe makes less sense now than he did last year, especially knowing how Trajan approaches things like this. I think one thing that's repeatedly been said is that Trajan and the Pistons front office in general are looking for someone that they can believe in long term. And I think that definitely affects like who you look at for the Pistons this offseason in terms of trades or whatever. Because I doubt you take someone who you don't know is going to be there next year, especially knowing how this front office moves financially, how they move in terms of just having some level of control on things. You look at the contracts they've given out the last few years. Duncan Robinson has a team option. Karis LeVert was a pretty controllable contract. Tobias Harris was a really short-term contract. Even Malik Beasley back in the day, 1 year, $6 million deal. Like guys like that kind of had some form of optionality around them, to use his favorite term. Um, I think that definitely impacts how you look at things. And I think that's also a reason why Detroit would especially be interested in Lauri Markkanen.
I mean, his contract's not too bad. It's like 40-ish million the last time I looked. So I mean,
Yeah.
it's like 45, 46. Which I mean, it's not unbearable. Like I think it's a contract where like, yeah, he's not the best defender, but I think people kind of over exaggerate his defense in a sense where y- yes, he can be a traffic cone at times, but at least he can move his feet a little bit.
Yeah. He like, and also the guy is like 6'10", right? Like at the
Yeah.
end of the day, if you want, there's ways to use a guy like that where he's able to make a difference on the defensive end of the game. Like he can change things. Not saying he's ever going to be an all defensive guy or like qualifying for defensive player of the year or anything like that, but he is someone that with his size he can make a difference. And knowing JB, he can get creative in how he uses him as a defender. Obviously, the emphasis will be on the offensive end of the game where the Pistons severely lacked this season. I also think like the two-man game between him and Jaylen Duren could potentially also be like a really big win. Um, I like I look at Duren kind of getting the worst of the matchups, right? Like anytime there's a bigger lineup, you look at Jared Allen, Evan Mobley, for instance.
Hmm.
Um, you got a lot of attention around Jaylen Duren because he's a bigger guy. But you have a bigger power forward next to him where you have a 6'10", 6'11" Lauri Markkanen, and that also attracts a lot of attention where it opens up things for Jaylen Duren. And then that's also a guy for Jaylen Duren to have some form of two-man game with. Markkanen can make plays passing the ball. Duren can make plays passing the ball. I think that's also definitely a move. Not that it's really a question, but if you're really investing in Jaylen Duren long term, I think Lauri Markkanen's totally a guy you look at.
Yeah, I mean, imagine all the threes that Tobias was getting, and then just kind of supplement that with Laurie Markkinen and the 20 points a game that he was averaging with Utah. I mean, it would open up the offense completely. Again,
Yep.
I don't know if Utah trades him. I'm not sure. Why would you trade for Jaren Jackson Jr. if you're just going to offload on Laurie Markkinen? Kind of seems like Utah is in a position where we want to compete. We want to start winning games because obviously the hasn't been too kind to us, even though they just got like what the second or third overall pick. It'll be interesting to kind of see like what their trajectory and outlook is going into next season. But probably gonna do like one more topic and then we can wrap this podcast up. And we did kind of talk about like NBA draft. And I wanted to kind of ask you, like, is there one prospect that you've fallen in love with just like kind of watching the tape so far?
There are two. If I'm to be completely honest, I look at Cameron Carr, who I don't know if he's going to be available at 21. He's a big combine riser. His measurements went nuts on NBA on draft Twitter, and then just his overall play, he took over in the combine game as well. He's someone I look at as like if there is a Tyrese Maxey available at 21, like you look at the guy that was like how was he available at 21? How did the Pistons manage to grab this guy and make him a long-term fit on your team, because he's a guy who can play the two guard position, slots right into your starting lineup. Not that you're expecting to start him immediately, but you know, he is someone who could down the road start in that position. um Man, I think he would be such a good fit on this team. I think you get Cameron Carr at 21, or potentially also I definitely I think the Hornets have the 18th pick in the draft. If the Pistons really have the guy they believe in, I totally think that's a very doable trade. I can't see the Hornets really married to the 18th pick because I believe they pick 14th or 15th as well.
Hmm.
So that's definitely something I would keep an eye on if the Pistons really fall in love with the guy. Like Cameron Carr, for example, if he's available, whether it be around their range, I totally expect them to try and go get Cameron Carr. Um, he also like he's a little bit skinnier, right? But like if you look at that like that as a downside, I don't really see that as the case, because guys come into the league at one weight, come out a whole different one. Like you look at Cade, rookie year tape, he doesn't look like the same guy. Like it doesn't look like the same person.
Yeah.
Um, there's just not a lot for me to not love about Cameron Carr. He's just kind of like a guy who can do a little bit of everything. He's not an extremely um amazing defender, but he has great shot blocking for a guard. I don't know if you've seen his shot blocking tape, but it's really impressive. I think he's someone who really could be a difference maker. I look at him and I compare him to like maybe a Jalen Williams, J Dub. That is not the Jalen Williams who plays center for the Oklahoma City Thunder. But I totally see a J Dub in Cameron Carr, and I think if you can get him, that's a window changer. That is a move that totally can impact the long term future of this team. And then I also look at Ibuka Okori. Um, who a lot of draft Twitter seems to fall in love with as well. And to be honest, that's kind of where a lot of my scouting started before I started doing full tape watch and getting into big boards and mock drafts and all that kind of thing. Ibuka Okori is someone who I look at and I say like this guy wherever he goes will be like a shocker to the NBA. I have a hard time not seeing him pan out in the NBA because of all the little things he can do on the basketball court. People look at his size. I believe he's like 6'2" and say he's a smaller guard. Why would he fit on this team? He's a ball handler, much like Danis Jenkins. He's a ball handler, much like Marcus Sasser. However, he has that level of punch to his game that kind of reminds me of, and cover your ears if this is still a sensitive subject, but he kind of kind of reminds me. I watch his tape and it's like an ethical Jaden Ivey. Um, he's because even at when you look at Ivy's tape and Purdue, and again, this is me speaking, just like doing very base level scouting so far because my scouting started like a week or so ago. So I'm sure there's guys who can give you more qualified answers, and I'm sure there's someone in the comments who's be like, "This guy doesn't know what he's talking about." But and what I've seen, his play reminds me a lot of Ivy in that end where he's this speed demon. He's able to really get up there. But I also think even though I was a big fan of Jaden Ivey coming out of Purdue, I thought he was, in my opinion, there was a point where I thought he was the best prospect in that draft. Obviously, aged poorly, but you live and you die by your takes. I still stand. I stood on it. I'm still gonna admit to it now. But I think what differentiates him between Jaden Ivey is obviously he's a smaller guard, but I think he's a much smarter player. I think he's a much smarter player. I think he makes a lot better reads. He has a great feel for the game on the offensive end, and I think his playmaking is such a big win for the Pistons that if you can get this guy at 21, I think you walk away from the draft really happy with what you did. I think he's a super high ceiling guy. I look at Ibuka Okori as a guy who can make an all-star team in the future. He's like there's only a handful of guys that late in the draft that you really are like, okay, this guy could still pan out to be something of that level of like talent where they're making an all-star team or in the consideration for an all-star team. And I totally think that's something in the cards. I think he's someone who, if he falls that far in the draft, it's just because he fell through the cracks. um I totally see this guy wherever he goes. Part of me thinks he ends up in Toronto. um being a steal of the draft no matter where he goes.
It's kind of funny because I just pulled up Tankathon for like a mock draft just to kind of talk about, like, we're talking about Cameron Carr, like they have him going 15 to the Bulls. Uh, Corey, who you just talked about, they actually have him end of the lottery or end of the
Oh,
first round, excuse me, 26
okay.
to the Nuggets, which I mean, out of like all the guards in that range, I think he does make a whole lot of sense. Like one of the guards that I did like, which I don't know if he's going to be there for the Pistons, um, is the guard out of Iowa, Bennett Stritz. I think him and Okori, I think they're different types of guards. Obviously, I love his ability to get to the free throw line. Like I think that's like a really big skill out of his, but like he doesn't really turn the ball over too much either. Like he's just a
Yeah.
really high level point guard, and obviously you need more ball handlers. I really felt last year we didn't address the backup point guard role. It was just like, hey, Karras, hey, Ivy, like you're going to be backup point guards when they have a skill set to bring the ball up the court, but they're not really organizers the way Okori could be off the bench. Um, with the Pistons, I could also see him sharing the backcourt with Cade in situations where he's bringing the ball up the court and Cade could play off ball. Um, I haven't watched too much tape on him. I kind of got into it maybe like 2 days ago, but I didn't finish. It was like a 60-minute highlight reel. I think I got 20 minutes in, but I mean, like, I looked that pick by you by a lot though, man.
Yeah, and then if I can throw one more in there, I really like Joshua Jefferson. If you're looking at a guy who you want to maybe add in the front court, I think Joshua Jefferson is another guy that you could look at. Especially with Tobias being a free agent, you don't know for certain if you're bringing him. I think the Pistons probably re-sign him, but even then, I think Tobias and Joshua Jefferson is a power forward rotation that you really feel comfortable with. I think he's such a safe scorer. I think he has great feel. If you can catch a feel for what I like in players coming out of the draft, if you have good feel for the game, I most likely will end up being a big fan. And Joshua Jefferson is no different. I think he's just a winning type of player. I don't know. I wouldn't say he has like an all-star type of ceiling, but he's a guy who I think could be in the NBA for a really long time as a rotation player, high-end role player, and totally could be a starter within 2 to 3 years. I think Joshua Jefferson is a great pick. And then to touch on Bennett Sturts briefly, I think he's most likely gone before 21. He's gonna totally be a draft darling. Um, I at first wasn't in love with his game, not because I didn't see the positive qualities, but I just kind of didn't see the upside. And I think regardless of who you pick, if you're Detroit, I think this is a pick where you kind of want someone with a little bit of upside, because you have obviously guys like Ausar, Cade, and Duren, but to add another guy who could still maybe pop in the future really changes a lot for you, right? Because of those three guys, only one's really a dynamic scorer. Duren, this year averaging around like 18 to 19 points per game is huge, but he's not probably ever going to be like oh my god, look at Jaylen Duren dropping like 40, right? Like that's not going to be a
Yeah.
consistent thing with him, or it's not going to be a guy who's like a super flashy player. um Cameron Carr is that for me, but and that's why I kind of favored him more than Bennett Sturts, even if Sturts was available. That being said, um I've come around on him in the last few days, where I see him as a really high field player, a really like smart basketball player. I think he has a great shot, a great 3-point shot that hopefully can translate to the NBA. And he makes great reads, he makes great passes, and he's really not prone to turnovers, which, if you're a Pistons fan, really warms your heart, because this is a team that loves to turn the ball over like crazy. And I totally think he alleviates pressure off of Cade. I think he's of the guys that we talked about so far. If you draft Brennan Sturts, I think you expect him to start day one. I totally would put him in the starting lineup, barring like the worst summer league of all time. I
Yeah.
totally would put him in the starting lineup. Um, you still have Duncan. You totally bring him off the bench, and that just opens up a lot. And you could still Danis, I think, has pretty much solidified himself as the sixth man of this team. And having a guard rotation where you have two guys like that, who can handle the ball and can spot minutes with Cade, whether it be Danis, whether it be Bennett, I think that could also be huge too. So there's a handful of guys I really think could be great for the Pistons.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going playmaking, like all those guys kind of make sense. Maybe not Sturts to an extent because I don't actually see him as a point guard at the next level. I see him more of like a undersized two guard. Like I see a lot of Tyler Hero. Like this the way he comes off screens and the way he's just shooting really deep. Like I see a lot of similarities to Tyler Hero in his game. But I mean, you're just talking about 3-point shooting and scoring. Like Malik Thomas to me, all that kid does is score. Like that, he does not look the pass. Like he's just a certified bucket. Like if I'm just looking for a score, like Malik Thomas would be pretty high on my board if I was a Piston fan.
Yeah, Malik Thomas. I want to say it was like 2 or so weeks ago, I wrote down just like a list of guys that I thought the Pistons could target at 21. A lot of people are really holding their breath for Yaxel Lendenberg. I'm just here to tell you right now that's not going to happen,
No.
unless you make some really significant trade up, or Yaxel has the worst draft interviews of all time. You're probably not walking away from this draft with Yax, which I'm a big fan of his game. I think he's going to be a great player in the NBA. For that reason, he's not going to be available at 21. But You look at guys like, excuse me if I'm butchering his name, but Dalen Swain, Cameron Carr, Isaiah Evans, Bennett Sturts, Christian Anderson, Tyler Tanner, Malik Thomas, and Joshua Jefferson. I think those are all guys that realistically, at least one of them will be available at 21. And I think any of those guys you feel pretty good with, but of the guys we talked about so far, obviously, I have my like 3 or 4 guys that I really think could be a big hit. I'm personally pushing for Cameron Carr. I think Cameron Carr is going to be a really, 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 really big pick if you can make that. Um, I just really believe in what he's able to do, and I think he's someone who's just waiting to pop on the NBA level. Not saying he's going to be a day one guy where he just comes out, hair on fire, just playing like a J Dub out the gate, but I totally think that's someone who can end up being a really significant player for whichever team drafts him.
Yeah, I mean, I think he was every Pistons fan's dream until the NBA Combine, and he just drops 30, and then
Yeah,
he shoots up to like late lotto, and you're like, ah, shit, like that's the guy I wanted. He played too well. Maybe Trajan actually drafts his first Dookie. I mean,
Isaiah Evans.
Isaiah Evans, man, like I was watching him, and my buddy's like, does he kind of shoot like Brandon Ingram a little bit? I was like, I kind of see it. Obviously, he's not as like jerky as Bi, but I mean, Isaiah Evans, in my opinion, I think he's the best shooter in this class. Like just the way he's able to get those threes up and like make a pretty good percentage on high volume. And I mean, you're looking for a kind of like a 2-3. I think he kind of fits into that mold.
Yeah, I totally see the vision with Isaiah Evans. He kind of reminds me a little bit, ironically, because the first name of Isaiah Joe, in OKC.
Hmm.
I think he's someone who I've seen pretty consistently mocked, 26 to 30 range, which is pretty surprising. And obviously, I'm not like a huge college basketball guy, especially lately because I've just been so dialed into the NBA. So a lot of my scouting or analysis of these guys comes in watching a shit ton of YouTube and
Yeah,
reading a bunch of scouting reports and mock drafts and all these other types of things where I'm like, okay, I'm starting to get a feel for these guys, and then I'll read or watch their interviews and get a feel for their who they are, because a lot of times that does matter, if you're looking at a player and trying to evaluate them as a whole. um I think Isaiah Evans is totally someone who would have interest in this front office. Obvious reasons, right?
yeah,
Duke shooter. I'm sure there's some level of favorability there. I totally think he's someone who could plug and play pretty seamlessly. I think the question marks around him are on the defensive end of the game. Especially being a young player, JB's not going to let you off easy if you're not being at least an aggressive defender, even if you're not a talented defender, or you're not a skilled defender. If you're not really making plays on that end of the game, especially as a young player, it's hard for me to envision JB trusting a young player like Isaiah Evans if he doesn't make developments on the defensive end of the game. I'm a fan of him. I'm a fan of his. I'm a fan of what he does on the offensive end. I think I agree with you. He is one of the most talented shooters in this draft. I think if you're looking at the draft, I think you're looking at guys that you want to pick and you can feel confident are going to play day one. This isn't a scenario where you draft someone at 21 or maybe you trade up to 18 and you're like, hey, we're going to put you in the Motor City Cruise for a little bit, let you get a feel for the game, and then maybe we'll get you some spot minutes here or there, like they kind of did with Bobby. I don't see that as a realistic scenario, knowing kind of the direction this roster is going. You can't really afford that. You need someone who you can believe is part of this rotation, upon draft day, almost like, hey man,
yeah,
like we need you to go immediately. I think Isaiah Evans could be that, but ultimately it's on the defensive end of the game, knowing JB and knowing what he really prioritizes. Um, I can't say with confidence he would play day one.
yeah,
I personally would play Isaiah Evans day one. I don't know if JB Bickerstaff would play him day one, because JB is a stickler for defense. I mean, he would even get on Beasley, who was a veteran at that point, for defensive lapses. So it's definitely going to be a learning curve if they draft Isaiah.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's bad when even JB's kids are doing the shimmy and not getting back on defense. Like
Yeah,
he's like
yeah,
kind of
yeah,
like he
yeah.
even said it's like, yeah, it's like now my kids are doing the shimmy, but yeah, I'm with you on Isaiah Evans. Like I'm not entirely sure if JB would actually like fully trust him. I mean, like Chaz Lanier, who we drafted this year, who I didn't think was actually like a bad defender. I thought he was passable at times. He got no clock in. Like he's a shooter. Like saw him just erupt in the Motor City Cruise this season. So I think they're looking for just like NBA ready now. Like you're in the rotation like day one. They don't need someone that's 2 years away from being 2 years away. To your point.
Yeah. I also totally think Chaz could and honestly should have gotten like a shot at some point.
Yeah,
I thought he played really well on the cruise, and I thought he did well with his NBA minutes, but that's neither here nor there. But yeah, like I totally think this is someone who you bring in day one, and you're like, hey, we need you to play immediately, right? Like we need you to be someone we trust as a contender in the NBA, contender in the Eastern Conference, to get significant minutes throughout the season. Obviously, not saying you're not allowed to make mistakes or stuff like that, but we're going to need to trust you that you're going to be able to keep up with the level of like a Cade Cunningham, keep up with an Ausar Thompson, whoever is playing power forward, whether it be Tobias Harris, trade guy, whatever, or and yeah, obviously keep up with Jaylen Duren. It's a lot to ask of a young player, but whoever you draft here, I totally think is someone that I mean, I probably most likely is not starting, unless you believe in Bennett starts, which it's a possibility.
yeah,
Um, but it's someone who's going to probably have a spot in the rotation, and it's someone who you're going to need to play big minutes.
yeah. I see a lot of. I don't want to call them pessimistic Pistons fans because I understand it. They're like, if we come out of the draft with another guy that can't shoot, and like I'm not gonna say this guy can't shoot, but he was kind of on my radar because he can play both ends of the floor. He plays with Cameron Carr actually. His first name's Tonde. I'm not gonna try to pronounce his last name because it's long as hell. But I mean, like, if they came out of the draft with him, I think a lot of Pistons fans would just be like rolling their eyes because he shot under 30% from three at Baylor. But I mean, he's just got the physical tools to be like a two-way forward.
Yeah, I totally think Tonde can be that level of player. Again, he's someone who I haven't done as much in depth scouting on. It's pretty much just been like um couch scouting, right? Like just
Yeah.
like watching YouTube or whatever. But I think you can still get somewhat of a feel. Like obviously I'm not gonna claim to be an expert on Tone Day. I wanna say I'm not gonna actually try. Do you still have the graphic that you made?
Yeah, I
Because
still have it.
I
Hold
could
on.
give it a shot here if I see his name. I wanted to say it's Tonde oh, uh,
Hold on. There we go.
Tonde Iyasafu. I want to say is
Yeah,
his last
probably.
name.
Yes, a fool.
Um, he is a really skilled player. I totally think it's valid to be like, oh man, we can't. He's not going to shoot the three ball immediately, but um, I believe in skill, man. Like if you really believe he's the best player available, I think you pick him. Especially because he's still someone who's yet to reach his ceiling and totally has a high ceiling. If you can get a high ceiling guy that isn't whose floor isn't, out of the NBA at 21, that's a pretty big win. If he's available and the Pistons front office and their scouting team totally believes this is the best player available, I would trust it. I feel like they haven't really given enough reason to not trust their process so far. I think this is a front office that kind of like does their homework, and I think whoever they pick is ultimately going to be um, seen with a lot of scrutiny, unless they're like somehow beloved upon arrival, but that's really rare in this fan base. Um, but I think summer league could be a big opportunity for whoever they draft to show to the fan base that okay, this is who I am. This is what I do. This is what my ceiling. This is get a feel for my game. Get a feel for where I'm going to be. Maybe day one. Obviously, guys who play amazing in summer league don't always translate to the league or vice versa. But it's going to be a pick that gets a lot of the scrutiny. But Tonde Iyasafu is someone that I totally believe in. Any of these guys, honestly, I think are good. I'm probably the lowest on Hans Steinbeck, um, just off of like again couch scouting. I'm not the highest on him, but I look at Malik Thomas, I look at Isaiah Evans, I look at any of these guys, and I go, okay, you feel pretty good with them at 21.
I'm so excited for you to watch Tone Day because like it looks like an Anthony Edwards clone when he
I've
shoots it.
seen clips of him on Twitter because like people will like play like the side by side, and they say like he kind of like looks like him on the court. I've seen. There was someone who like because there's also a Tyrese Halliburton look I can't remember who it is
Yeah, he goes
in
to
this
Iowa
draft.
State too,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
which is hilarious. But yeah, I mean, like I could see Pistons fans being like really upset if like that's who we drafted because he's not really a knockdown shooter, but everything else, like he's got like the NBA body, he's strong, he can switch, he can play like 2 through 3. But I mean, whoever they pick, or even if they do keep the pick, I think if you want to go ball handling, I do like a lot of the point guards in this draft. I know the guy that you had mentioned. I haven't done too much research on him, but I have watched a little bit of tape. There's a lot to like there. Not to mention, like he, went to a good school, so he's probably pretty smart. So you never really know, like how his basketball IQ is. But I mean, overall, I think they'll get a good player at 21 versus 28.
Yeah, I think this is like such a great position to be in, and the Jaden Ivey trade, obviously, a lot of people had different expectations for it. Some people didn't think it was going to happen, but being able to get a pick, 7 picks higher, in a pretty good, honestly, great draft class. We'll see how it pans out, but what's seen as a great draft class, um, is huge. It's a huge win, and I think this is something the front office totally has to take advantage of. They have to really dial in on their homework. I know a couple of their scouts. I know they do their job well. So I totally think this is a front office that's doing their homework on these guys, and I think this is a great position for them to be in, especially knowing that pretty much since like April that they would be around this range. So they've had a little bit more time to kind of get a feel for these guys, and I'm sure you'll start seeing workouts pretty soon here of who they're bringing in, who they're looking at. I have my pick of guys that I really hope they get. Tone Day, I'm totally gonna have to look into more. I think. So can you tell? Is he a score? Is he like a guy who can score but he can't shoot yet? Is that kind of his thing?
I mean, he can hit the occasional three if he's open, but I mean, it's not that he can't score. It's like he's got a post game, like he's got the physical tools to play the passing lane. Like he can be a point and attack defender. Like there's a lot to like about him. But I could totally see Pistons fans punching a wall if that's who Trajan picks, coming up here saying like, yeah, we tried to get the person right. Like I could 100% like see
Sure.
Pistons fans is like crash it out. Like let's like someone falls in the draft that was like a 3-point shooter, a playmaker. Like I could totally see us like crash it out over it. Like we
Yeah,
always
shout
do
out to
every
you
draft.
shout out to whoever's punching a hole in the wall over the 21st pick in the NBA draft. Respect, honestly. Respect. But yeah, man, I like based off of what I've seen, the limited amount I've seen and what like what I know of him, I think that would be honestly a good pick. Because it's not like the NFL draft where who you select is like impacting your offseason, because your offseason in the NFL, your offseason pretty much happens before the draft. Your offseason happens after the draft. So you have a lot to like build around if you pick a guy like, let's say Tone Day, or let's say like someone like Merez Johnson is available at 21 somehow. Um, those are guys that obviously are not going to shoot the ball unless they have some like what was his name, Ryan Dunn level like rookie year shooting leap where no one expected them to shoot the first year and all of a sudden they're shooting at like a pretty decent clip. That's awesome. But these are guys that like, okay, maybe they can't do X, Y, or Z yet, but you still have a whole offseason to fill in the gaps of guys who can do that, or Maybe a guy who can do whatever the guy you drafted. Like, oh, we have this guy. Why would we draft that guy? Maybe that guy's not on your team in a couple of weeks. Like, who knows, right? Like, it's the
Yeah.
NBA is such an interesting beast to look at in terms of the offseason and the draft happening before their offseason. I mean, honestly, the guy you draft could end up in a trade package. We've seen that happen. So who knows,
Oh,
man? But
man.
I totally think regardless, you go best player available. I'm just like I'm such a best player available guy, regardless of where your team is, whether your team's a contender, rebuilding, whatever it may be. You go best player available 10 times out of 10, and whoever feel the best player available is who you select at 21.
Yeah, I think they go more ball handling, personally.
Yeah.
In that player will probably be plus player available because I do think you'd much rather have a shooter that is maybe been in the league for a little bit longer. I think it's really hard to draft someone out of college that's a shooter and trust them to like learn the whole playbook and the actions. I think that's why you've seen like the Tim Hardaway Juniors, the Malik Beasleys, the Duncan Robinsons, Kevin Herter's come in. I think that's what the front office is looking for, like more experience at that kind of just like when you're looking at more floor spacing.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Like I don't expect, and that's part of why Isaiah Evans is someone I think could be a good pick, but ultimately I think he's a better suited for a team that maybe can't afford a shooter this offseason, whether that be in free agency or a team that's kind of on the younger side of things, maybe trying to figure out how to win, drafting someone who they believe can shoot. Because then he has the opportunity to play pretty much out the gate, learn the plays, learn how to be a shooter on the NBA. Because there's still that difference between shooting in college and NBA that takes some time to get adjusting to. That I can't see them picking someone who's specifically a shooter for that instance. That's why Bennett Sturts is like also a good pick because he does more than just shoot the basketball. Not to say Isaiah Evans is a one trick pony, but Bennett Sturts is someone who I look at and I'm like, okay, he can facilitate, he can play make. He is like overall a guy who affects the game in a lot of different ways. That okay, I see the value here. And then obviously, Ibuka Okori isn't necessarily like a shooter, but he can shoot the basketball. He can play make, and then most importantly, his touch around the basket is really good. I think he has the ability to be a great playmaker in the NBA, and I think that's ultimately like what you look at 21. You look at guys who can facilitate, guys who can create, and then obviously shooting would be a great plus as well. Not to take away from that.
Yeah, I agree. Do you have time for like maybe like one or two questions that people have
Totally.
asked during this podcast? So, I actually saw this and actually love this by Mark. He said, "Do you think we could get Case and Wallace from OKC?"
No. No, I do not.
No.
I know he has the same agent as Cade, which is cool. That's about as far as the Pistons connection is probably going to go. I don't see OKC letting go of Case and Wallace unless they made some huge trade where maybe you got Case and Wallace as like a third team. But I don't see OKC doing that. They're a couple games away from the finals here. He is totally a foundation of what they're doing long term.
Yeah.
OKC is a team to watch though in the draft in terms of what they do with their picks because they have 3 picks in this draft and they technically will only have one roster spot available. So that's going to be a team that's going to be interesting to watch how they maneuver around the cap, how they maneuver this draft. I totally think they're going to trade some of their picks and maybe consolidate them into one. Um, Maybe that's a trade up opportunity. Who knows? But regardless, I think Kaysen Wallace is not someone who is leaving Oklahoma City anytime soon.
Yeah, I mean, he's one of those players which doesn't like when you think of OKC, you don't automatically think of Case and Wallace. He's just such a good rotation piece for them. Like low keys are, he would probably put like numbers up in Detroit if he was here
Oh
because
yeah, big
and
time.
JB would love him too because he's a good
Yeah,
defender and
him and
he's a good.
Asar, man.
Yeah, like that would be a match made in heaven. But I think he has a team option with OKC, which they will probably pick up. But the 3 picks, there's no way they're keeping all 3 of those picks. I saw
Yeah,
someone float around like, yeah, like Giannis to OKC. I was like, this canceled the league at that point. Like,
I don't know, man. Giannis still has to see San Antonio at the end of the day.
I mean, I know someone posted a clip of him defending Wemby, and Wemby could not do anything trying to get by Giannis. But I mean, we'll see, man. We'll see.
Yeah.
I do like the Casey Wallace name. He's kind of like under the radar.
That would be an amazing fit. I cannot see unless something amazing happens for Detroit where all of a sudden he becomes available. I just can't see OKC ever being like, okay, here. I think they'd get rid of Caruso before they'd ever get rid of Case and Wallace, or they get rid of Lou Dort before they'd ever get rid of Case and Wallace. Who
Yeah,
Lou
I
Dort
mean,
is also someone. If we're talking Pistons offseason, I totally would keep an eye on. I think he's someone who would pretty seamlessly fit into the Pistons culture and what they're doing and what they're trying to build.
oh
And I
yeah,
think an Ausar Thompson, Lou Dort defensive duo would be a hell for the Eastern Conference. I know people have their mixed opinions on Lou Dort, but he's someone who could potentially be available this offseason as a free agent or as a trade candidate. So I would look at Lou Dort as someone who you could potentially bring in this offseason, especially if you address the shooting, scoring concerns in some other way. I totally think Lou Dort's someone I would keep an eye on for the Pistons, not necessarily Case and Wallace.
Lou Dort and Asar would be nasty.
Yeah.
That would just not. That would be unfair. Honestly, defensively, I would not like want to go up against Detroit.
And
Asar,
he can hit his corner threes too. So
yeah, I mean, whoever gets him, I think he'll be a good fit. I could totally see Sacramento just throwing him the bag. I don't know why. Um,
probably, who knows?
yeah, we got one more, which is more of a kind of a broad question. I have one player in mind. I don't know if we're gonna say the same player. Who's one realistic target you see for us in the off season?
So are we going free agency or trade on this?
You can. I'll let you go. Whatever with it. Doesn't matter.
Okay, I'll go one for each. Who do I? It's kind of funny. Ass a realistic target. Uh, no. Free agency. If Lou Dort hits free agency, I would keep an eye on him. For the Detroit Pistons, I think this is a team that obviously is looking for ball handling and scoring, right? But Lou Dort is someone who, in my opinion, really adds to the defense of this team. And I think this team could always use more perimeter defenders who can really like shake things up the way he can. I was kind of calling last season for Drew Holiday to maybe get some calls in Detroit here because I thought he might be a great fit. And I think he's that level of defender. He's that level of just game changer defensively. I think he could fit in perfectly in Detroit. Do I expect them to go after him? I don't know. Another free agent I will have them look at is Rui Hachimura. He might be a little bit more expensive than you thought after his postseason, but I still think he's a realistic target for Detroit, especially if maybe Tobias ends up getting more aggressive suitors elsewhere. I think he's someone who can kind of replicate offensively what Tobias does, but with a much higher 3-point percentage. And obviously you can't replace Tobias as a human being or honestly on the defensive end of the court, because I think Tobias was able to be a lot more productive defensively this postseason than Rui. But Rui's someone who can put up a lot of shots. He's someone who can score. He's got great size. I think he is totally a realistic free agency target for Detroit if they choose to go that way. And then if I were to go a realistic trade target, I already said Trey Murphy, so I'm going to avoid saying him again. We already talked about Lauri Markkanen, and we already talked about Kawhi Leonard as well. I might go out of left field here. I might say, "Hey, Boston, what's going on with Jaylen Brown?"
Ooh,
I'm not saying he's available. I don't think he's available. But I think that maybe potentially you look at. Okay, you know what? Realistic. I'll go away from that answer. That's not realistic. Realistic. Okay, let's just say I'm just gonna go Kyrie Irving. Kyrie Irving or Tyler Hero. I think those are two guys that totally could end up as Pistons this offseason. I think Tyler Hero less than Kyrie Irving. But I think that the Pistons adding a ball handler who can really put the ball in the basket, can really score, has shown the ability to be an all-star already, is a realistic goal. And I think they kind of want a proven guy, whether that be a Trey Murphy, whether that be a Kyrie Irving, whoever that may be. I think that's the type of player they're going to go after. Not saying Jaylen Brown's going to be. I doubt he would ever be available. That was purely hypothetical. That's kind of not the point of the question. So I'll go with Kyrie or Tyler Hero. I think most realistic is Trey Murphy. If I were to put money, not that I am encouraging anyone to do that, but if I were to put money on anybody, being a Detroit Piston this summer, I'd put money on Trey Murphy.
So I have two free agent targets that I think that could be realistic. The first one is John Collins, which I think makes a whole lot of sense just when you're talking about trying to get a stretch four. Like, let's say you can't get a Lauri Markkanen, but you're still looking for a stretch four. Like, I think John Collins, I know some people get on him with the defensive lapses at times, but I mean, it's a guy that can shoot the three, and not to mention, I'm sure he would love to catch lobs next to Jaylen Duren in the front court. It's the first player. Second player is CJ McCollum. Like if things just go completely in left field and you can't get any of those big names, like I wouldn't hate a CJ Cade backcourt together.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, you're kind of lacking a little bit of athleticism or speed in that backcourt. Those are two a little bit. I guess I don't want to say the athleticism thing for Cade. He's shown the ability to be a really athletic player, but he's not necessarily the fastest guy on the court.
Yeah.
And I think CJ kind of isn't really bringing up the pace a lot. I think he did a great job in Atlanta. I think he gets a lot of hate. I think CJ would be a good fit, but if you get CJ and that's it, for your offseason, I think Pistons fans would throw a riot in downtown
Oh yeah.
Detroit.
100%.
I think there would be Pistons jerseys burning, just because of the reputation that CJ had. Just because it's just not the type of off, because like there's a lot of Pistons fans, and I want to say like maybe Detroit sports fans, not just Pistons fans in general, who are like kind of holding on to hope for the Pistons as going and being the one team in the city to really like make a move, like make
Yeah.
a
Go
move
all in.
for like a guy. Which I honestly do think happens this summer. I do think
Me too.
Detroit goes after a guy. But regardless, if that doesn't happen and you just stay at 21, nothing really substantial happens, and then you just bring in CJ McCollum, I think a lot of Pistons fans and Detroit sports fans would go batshit insane in the negative way. And that's nothing against CJ McCollum. I think he would be a good addition to this team, but they would not handle that really well. So I can't see that being the case. I think this front office knows that they have a huge opportunity to obviously make themselves known as a contender, make a deep run in the playoffs, potentially in the finals next year, but also to grow the fan base. This team has been, I guess you could say, around the state pretty consistently like the number 2 team. Certain people it's the number 1 team, but it's pretty consistently a number 2 team because the Lions have, for whatever reason, always been number 1, right? They kind of had a not great off season, and they didn't really have a great season, and they have a weak schedule. We're not a Lions podcast. We're not here to talk about the Lions. But there's this precipice that the Pistons are on as potentially becoming the number 1 team in the city, even if it's for a short term
Yeah.
period. And especially now with the TV deal they have coming into next season being free for all Detroiters, it's going to get a lot more eyes on the product because there's so many more people that can watch with ease of accessibility, that it's going to be huge next season to really grow this Pistons fan base, grow, like the level of attention this team has locally, and build a fan base similar to how people talk about that 2004 going to work era, right? Like people still talk about that, even though the Pistons are almost on the conference finals. Like, man, if they were just the going to work team, you have the potential to really, make your stamp, make your brand of basketball known in the city. And if you can go out and nail this offseason, I think you're gonna do that. If you go out this season, this offseason, and it's only CJ McCollum, I'm sorry to tell you, they could win 63 games next season. I don't know. I don't know if there would be the same level of belief come postseason.
Yeah, man. I'm just saying, like, worst case scenario, you don't get any of those big fish or any of those big names, and you just kind of have to consolidate with, like, yeah, let's go get like another shooting guard for maybe a year. Like, worst case scenario, like
Yeah, totally.
that should not be Pistons fans like mindset going into this offseason. I'll give you a trade option.
Sure.
Michael Porter Jr. I think Brooklyn last year, they wanted to see what his trade value was and try to kind of gauge it. I still feel like they're going to be a bad team next year. They're still going to be in rebuild mode, and they got hosed in the lottery. Absolutely hosed in the lottery. And they might take another point guard because like where they're at, they might have to. But
Yeah.
MPJ and Trey Murphy to me seem probably the most realistic if I'm a Piston fan.
I look at Trey Murphy. Just got Trey Murphy on the mind right now. Michael Porter Jr. I look at Michael Porter Jr. as someone who was almost a Piston this season, right? Like it felt like he was right there at like maybe they're gonna get a deal done. I think Michael Porter Jr. would be a great addition to this team, but knowing what we've seen with this team in the postseason and just kind of like looking at how we view this team, I don't know if I can say Michael Porter Jr. is going to raise your ceiling the level that Lauri Markkanen would necessarily. And that's because I think he's a great shooter. He showed a great ability to make plays with the ball. But I think his value in the playoffs, and especially like if he's going to be the second option on this team, is going to end up being a off the ball kind of guy. I can't necessarily see them running a lot of actions through Michael Porter Jr. while still also being, the 3-point shooter that he is. And for that reason, I don't know if he's necessarily the most realistic. I mean, maybe they still go out and trade for him, and I look stupid in 3 months here. But I just, we talk about ball handling, we talk about defense, and like not to say Michael Porter Jr. isn't able to handle the ball. Obviously, like he was able to do a little bit more of that in Brooklyn, but I don't know if I can necessarily see the fit as much as I did earlier this year. I think earlier this year you just think, okay, we just need another guy who can score the ball in high volume like Michael Porter Jr. and welcome to the NBA Finals to Detroit Pistons, right? And who knows, maybe that's still the answer. But I came away from this postseason being like, okay, I think they need a little bit more than Michael Porter Jr. And not that I still am not a fan of Michael Porter Jr. I think he's a great basketball player. You do trade for him some shape or form this offseason. I think, okay, you got a really skilled basketball player, and I'm really curious to see him play with Cade Cunningham, especially him play with Jaylen Duren, him play with Ausar Thompson. But then that makes the Duncan fit maybe a little more questionable because Duncan's not necessarily a plus defender, and then Michael Porter Jr. is obviously not a plus defender. So it's just it's interesting. I'm still pro Michael Porter Jr. in general for the Pistons, but I'm not necessarily as high on him as I was.
Yeah, I mean, to me, I don't think you would ask as much of him as he was playing in Brooklyn, but maybe you're kind of asking him to have maybe a similar role to Denver, but maybe you're getting a good 5 to 7 more touches. Kind of putting him in that Tobias role where it's kind of like, we know you're going to be more of a consistent shooter. We know you can put it on the floor, but defensively, yeah, there are questions there. I think there are some. As long as he doesn't do any podcasts, I'm good.
Nah, if he's doing the Pistons Talk podcast, it's all good.
That would probably get canceled too. But overall, like I like him as a player. But I still think Trey Murphy to me makes the most sense just because of Trajan's history, and not to mention, we have a lot of Troy Weaver picks up here. And I'm sure Troy would love to get his hands on a lot of his previous draft picks if you get into trades. I'm sure he thinks about Jaylen Duren. He thinks about Stu just because look at their center rotation right now. In New Orleans, they don't really have a go-to center. Like I personally think if there is a Trey Murphy trade at any point, it's probably one of the centers that Detroit picked in a trade involving Trey Murphy to Detroit.
Yeah. Because of his contract, I don't know if necessarily you'd have to. And I also think like leverage wise, I don't know if New Orleans has the leverage to be like, hey, like let's say Detroit doesn't want to include Stu in any of these deals, right? Like you
Yeah,
could say, all right, well, we'll be willing to offer more pick capital instead.
yeah,
I think if you're New Orleans, you take that just because you're kind of entering next season as like this weird, I don't know, man. Like that's also part of the Trey Murphy thing that really that makes it confusing for me to evaluate because I think this is a team in New Orleans that could be like maybe like where Dallas was this season, where they're like kind of around the play-in range. I think they could make the play-in. I think they were talented enough. They had a good second half of the season. That being said, the priority for this team should be getting more draft talent, right? Like
yeah,
whether that's especially with the new lottery system, as long as they are like around that play in range, they'll be okay. Um, but I think it's just hard for me to be like, okay, well, pick capital is really going to smooth things over with Troy Weaver because maybe Troy Weaver thinks this is like a team that could be top 6 in the West. That's a realistic possibility. I don't know. Um, but I think Trey Murphy is someone who you can get without necessarily giving up that core because his contract is so um favorable. And I also think that's also part of why this front office, if I could imagine, would be salivating over one specific player, it'd be Troy Weaver because they love those types of contracts where it's like a high value player in a
yeah.
really controllable contract, still young. But maybe that's also why they would ask for a member of the core of this team. So who knows? I mean, I don't know. I personally, I'm gonna stand on the Isaiah Stewart needs to be part of this Pistons team as long as
Oh,
you want to be
100%.
a member of
The Stu Crew.
this yeah member of this group. But as long as you want to be a contender, I think he's such an important point of what they do defensively. I do think Troy Weaver obviously loves him. And I think that would definitely be like potentially something that he asked for. But if I'm Detroit, I'm not giving up Stu.
I just think in the event if it does come to Trey, which I know some people they see like the talk around him, especially with like it could take a Mikal Bridges or a Desmond Bain type of trade, which that doesn't surprise me at all.
So,
Um,
not to interrupt you, sorry, but when you look at both of those trades, neither trade really involved like a core player.
yeah,
Um, and you look at like Casey, it was like KCP and Cole Anthony for Desmond Bain, and then Mikal Bridges, it was like Bojan Bogdanovic. I think it was just Bojan Bogdanovic and pick capital, right?
I'd have to look back, but I mean, if it's just picks, then yeah, maybe you do that. But if it's, I'm just thinking of previous GM drafted a majority of our core where we just had our most two successful seasons in the last 20 years. You probably would want to try to bring one of his guys. I mean, he signed
He
Sadiq.
totally would, for sure.
Signed Sadiq Bey. Obviously, I like Jeremiah Fears. I like Derek Queen. I think they're good players, but I think New Orleans is in a really weird situation. I don't know whether they want to rebuild or they want to compete. They're kind of just stuck in the middle. It's a weird situation.
I mean, okay, here's a guy that I still am high on, and would not cost any real pick capital or core player, if New Orleans was willing to move off of him. DeJounte Murray. I think DeJounte Murray came off of an Achilles tear, looking like DeJounte Murray pre-Achilles tear, which is pretty insane. His contract's still pretty favorable as well. Again, this is all up to New Orleans really picking a direction, which Troy Weaver was not great at doing here. He was great at drafting, picking directions, and roster construction was not really his thing. So who knows if that's maybe still affecting him in New Orleans. But if New Orleans is like, hey, we're going to just wipe our hands, Zion's on the trade block. Herb Jones is on the trade block. Trey Murphy's on the trade block. We're open for sale. We want to keep our young guys, and we want to, build a young core from start. I'd look at DeJounte Murray. If you're in that scenario of like what you're talking about with CJ McCollum, where shit just goes left, you don't get the big fish that you want to be able to get. I would personally look at DeJounte Murray as I would happily take DeJounte Murray in Detroit. I think you look at what he's able to bring on the basketball court. He's a pesky defender, plus offensive player. He has an insane wingspan for being like 6'3", 6'4". He would be a JB Bickerstaff like dream come true on the basketball court, because he's just such a dog defensively, and he talks a lot of shit, and he would immediately fit into the culture here. But maybe they're just trying to replicate the culture in New Orleans, and maybe they're just trying to be the Detroit Pistons in New Orleans, and they're going to only ask for guys that Troy Weaver drafted, which is a total realistic possibility. And I totally think that might be a sticking point in negotiations. We'll see.
Yeah, Murray would actually be like really under the radar pickup. No, we're not going after Ja. Whoever just said that, better just delete your comment. You're gonna piss me off. No,
okay, hold on. Okay, I want to entertain this just for like 1 second. I wouldn't be opposed to it if you're not giving up anything of value. If you're not giving up anything of value and you get Ja Morant back. Look, I know where things were this season, but I still believe there's a player there. You look at the game you played in France. Yeah. I think this is kind of an outlier season. I know, like, some people think his athleticism is gone. I don't. I just think he's kind of in this weird situation. I think there's a lot of off the court factors that are kind of going into it. Do I think he's going to get up to some horrible antics in Detroit like everybody else has? No. I think he's grown. I just think he's in a shitty situation right now. I think his value is the lowest it's probably ever going to be until he's like 36 or whatever. I think Ja Morant, wherever he goes, will have a resurgence. I seriously, truly do believe that. Do I believe the fit is in Detroit? No, because he still can't shoot the basketball, and they still need guys who can shoot the basketball. But they also need guys who can score. I'm just saying. I wouldn't do it. But if Memphis is like, hey, we'll give you an extra young player for taking on Ja, I'd consider it. I would at least consider it. I'm not saying I would do it, but I would consider it.
I mean, you better give me Cam Spencer and some draft capital just to even take on the headache that comes with him. I got T Morant like courtside with like Jalen Rose out there. Like, I just
that'd be cinema, man. I don't know what you're talking about. That'd be an awesome. T Morant would be turned up in the Cure Auto Insurance Club, bro. That man would be having the time of his life here.
Cure Auto Insurance.
No, I'm joking. I do think Ja, though, on a serious note, I do think he will have a resurgent season wherever he goes. I do think there's still a great player there. I just don't think it's here.
It's his shooting has got worse every single year since his rookie year, and the one thing that made him incredible was his athleticism and dunking the ball, and he basically said, I don't want to do that anymore. So it's just like, what do you even like kind of do if you don't want to dunk the ball and be athletic and just, I don't want to swear on this podcast, but fuck shit up. What are we gonna kind of do there? But I mean, I saw someone mention Ja like 3 times. I don't see it. Even if it's a buy low option, like, you need more perimeter spacing, and that's not something that he thrives at. But I mean, if you're trying to sell tickets and just get all the dunks and all the transition buckets, sure, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I would not even have him in like my top 10 of Pistons targets. Low key, on the lowest of keys, I wouldn't. Seriously, I don't think Ja Morant should come to Detroit. I don't think that's a good fit for him. The number 1 pick in that draft, however, people have written him off. He had a healthy season. He played for Trajan Langdon before. No, he is not a shooter, but goddamn, can that man score the basketball? And you need more than anything. You need guys who can score the basketball. I'm not saying I would do it. Again, I'm not saying I would, but he would honestly be in my top 10 of guys that I would consider trading for. Also because of the cost. The cost, I think, would be pretty low. Zion
You're gonna
Williamson, man. I think Zion
uh,
Williamson. I think Zion Williamson um, is another guy, not like Ja Morant. I seriously don't think Ja is. Again, I can't say that enough. I don't think he's a fit here, but I do think Zion could be. I think a Zion, um, Cade 2-man game
oh
would. God, that would be cinema. That would be incredible to watch if you could just get um, some form of 3-point shooting from him where he's shooting like 33 4 per 5% from three. Hey man, I'm just saying, I don't think it would happen. I don't expect it to happen, but if it did happen, one person who would not be hating on it would be me. I think Zion is a great basketball player.
he has probably got the weirdest contract I've ever seen. I'm not even talking about the monies are. I don't know if you've ever read his contract details before,
Oh, is it like it's like the staying in shape one, right?
which he did
He
this
did.
year. He
Yeah.
did. I mean, he's got 42 going into next season, and then 44, and then he's a UFA. So there's not that much money that is attached to him, but he has to play. Let's see, 41 games, and he'll get 50% of his salary. And he has to hit above that metric, which he did hit that metric, so he will get the full 40. But you have to weigh less than 295 pounds, man. That's crazy. That's even
Yeah,
in the
it's
contract
it's it's
details.
nuts. It's nuts. Again, that's why I wouldn't have him, be like, oh yeah, let's go out here and go get Zion. But hey man, low cost. And like these are just like if shit hits the fan and Kyrie ends up in Minnesota, Trey Murphy ends up in Indiana, Utah tells you to just, block my number. I'm not trading Lauri Markkanen, and Kawhi aspiration deal makes it to where you can't trade for him, and you're kind of running thin on options. Boston's keeping Derek White, and then obviously the Jaylen Brown thing I don't think is going to happen, but like you're looking at all your options pretty much drying up. And free agency maybe isn't going your way. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, Cade has said that he'd like to play with Zion before he even got drafted.
Oh,
He
okay. I
said
didn't know you said
he
that.
if you get bored, Old Man of the Three did an interview and they were talking about Zion, and he's just like, I like
Oh,
Zion.
okay.
He's
Okay.
like, I like Zion a lot. I will say, when players do leave New Orleans, they all of a sudden get healthy and they all of a sudden play some of their best basketball. Like Brandon Ingram, everyone thought was like completely washed, and he had a hell of a season in Toronto. Kind of sucks he got hurt during the playoffs because I honestly think Toronto probably could have upset Cleveland. Looks like Cleveland's not doing too well right now
Yeah,
against the Knicks, but I mean, I don't know, man. It's kind of like a buy low option. I mean, Zion at power forward would be kind of fun, but I feel
dude.
like you'd have to put the ball in his hands a lot more than you want to put the ball in Jaylen Duren's hands. Jaylen Duren would just have to be a lob threat and just kind of just like a screen setter for those two.
I mean, if you talk about ball handling as well, I mean that's someone who can also handle the ball. I'm not saying like that's something we really should be entertaining this offseason. I think more realistically, you're gonna end up with a Trey Murphy or one of the other guys we talked about. But I think Zion Williamson would be really fun in Detroit. I think his ability to create so much gravity as a scorer opens up a lot for Duran. I think it opens up a lot for Cade, and it could even open up a lot for Ausar as well if he gets more aggressive. I think that'd be a really fun basketball team to watch. Like if you talk about like most fun teams to watch in the league, you get a healthy Zion Williamson on this team. That would be really fun to watch.
Yeah, I mean, I think if he got out of New Orleans, I don't know if the Detroit nightlife would be kind of a distraction, but I mean, I don't know if he's gonna be downtown as much as he would be downtown in New Orleans. But I mean, you guys been down in Detroit, you know how lit it gets at night.
Yeah,
It's good. I don't hate the idea though.
yeah, no, I just I don't think it would happen. I don't think it's really even something that's really being considered, but um it's just a fun thought experiment.
Yeah, but we've been on for 2 hours. I don't think I've ever actually had you on a podcast for 2 hours before.
First time for everything. Here we go.
I mean, as soon as you started Jaylen Brown, I mean, the comment section went a little wild. It just turned into like a whole. Got a bunch of Boston fans in here saying, "Yeah, right." It's kind of funny how you say something and then you just get like the other fan bases in here. I mean, I got Knicks fans in here saying like, "We would have swept y'all too." Go off, I guess. But I want to give you the
Sure.
floor to plug and promote where people could find you because I know you'll probably be getting into some off-season content. I would assume.
Yeah, most likely. Um, you'll be seeing more of my stuff. I still have like games I haven't posted of photography this season. Um, so I'll still be posting stuff from the vault, from the photography aspect of things. You can find me on Instagram at Zariq Xavier, and then you can find Bully Ball on Instagram at Real Bully Ball, and then same for Twitter as well. Um, you can find us on bullyball.net. I'm putting a proverbial little title here, but it's not there. But yeah, you can find us at bullyball.net. That's where we put our articles. We should have an Ausar one coming out pretty soon, written by Bryce Hollins, who's been contributing with us a little bit this season. I recently put out a story about the 2023 season and how this whole movement kind of started, and then also how I got started covering the Pistons and just my journey as well. So if you want to check that out, that's on our website. And yeah, man, I appreciate you having me on. I always have a great time on this show.
I know someone's just like, I just saw Zara on Locked On Pistons. Now I see him on here. I mean, I always kind of just like sarcastically say sometimes Ku and I just trade weekends with having Zara on the podcast. Shout out to Ku and Locked On.
uh,
I actually had him on here during the playoffs. I wanted to tell you during the podcast. It was really funny. So I actually let him rant about JB not playing his SAR after like I think it was like game one against the Magic.
mhm.
Bro, he went on for like 15 minutes, and I just let him go. It's like, oh man, I rage baited him in this topic. Like, I'm just gonna let him go off.
You
But
could have, yeah. I mean, that was that until until Asar started playing significant minutes, it was really like what's going on right now? Like, how is he not playing more than 25 minutes a game?
yeah, I mean, it was funny. But shout out to Koo, shout out to Locked On. We'll be able to put your social media links. We'll put your website, everything like that in the description after we're done with this podcast. But appreciate all you guys in here. I mean, got over almost 400 people in here during the NBA playoffs. Love it. We will be sometime next week. I'll try to do another podcast if there's more news. If not, enjoy your summer, you guys. Peace.